Hello. So this is my first video blog ever. This is going to be for the Old Testament introduction class I'm taking through CCU. This video is going to be for part 2 of session 4, the vlog for themes of the Old Testament. So for those two themes, what I chose was covenants, and then I chose idolatry. And so covenants to me is the basis a lot for biblical theology. A lot of that comes down to the different covenants and understanding the sacrifices and stuff that go with those covenants. So to fully appreciate the New Testament with Jesus dying on the cross for our sins and then raising from the dead and understanding the sacrifice that he had to do for us, I feel like if you don't understand the whole concept of the covenants and stuff and sacrifices in the Old Testament, you don't really appreciate what that all means. So that's why I chose covenants. And then idolatry I chose because when we think of idolatry, we might think of the idols and stuff that they have in the Old Testament, which is where that all started. But we still have a big problem with idolatry today because idolatry is anything that takes the place of God. So I feel like these are two of the more important themes in the Old Testament. That's why I chose those two themes. So I'll get right into it. I'm going to start with covenants, so where you find them in the Old Testament. So there's several covenants in the Old Testament. And the first one is going to be with Adam, when God created the earth, and he had and then Adam and Eve were there in the Garden of Eden, and God had a covenant with them. And the whole idea of sacrifices comes in when with the fall, and then they realized that they were naked. So then God had to kill an animal to give them clothing, and so that was the idea of sacrifice for that covenant with God. So that happens in Genesis 3, right in the very beginning, the first covenant with God. And then as they go along, after that covenant, after the initial fall with them in Eden, then all of humanity kind of falls away from God and makes choices to not follow God and all those things. And so then we get to the time of Noah, which is still in the very beginning of the Bible, and God makes another covenant after he destroys the world. He makes a covenant with Noah and his descendants, and actually all the humanity on the earth, because that's all that was there at that time. And so that's going to be found in Genesis 9. And so it says in Genesis 9:11, I establish my covenant with you, and all flesh shall never again be cut off by the water of the flood, neither shall there be again a flood to destroy the earth. So that's going to be our second covenant found in the Old Testament there. And then the third covenant, also in Genesis. These all are like right in the beginning, back to back, because God makes a promise, and then the people disregard their part of that covenant, and so then God makes another promise, and the people disregard. So then it gets to Abraham, and again says that they've fallen away, but Abraham is a righteous man. God decides to choose Abraham to be the founder of, or the father of, the people that he's going to use to show who he is in the earth. So to Abraham, he said, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all families of the earth will be blessed. And so, and that's in Genesis 12. And so that covenant with Abraham is like the new covenant after the Noahic covenant, specifically for the Israelites. But through the Israelites, he's going to bless all nations. And what he's getting at that eventually is going to be through Jesus, because Jesus is a descendant from Abraham. So then Abraham's descendants get into slavery in Egypt, and then after a certain amount of time, which he actually tells them that's going to happen and all that, but after a certain amount of time, then he takes Moses to bring them out. So then we have the Mosaic covenant. All right, and the Mosaic covenant is going to be from the time they leave Egypt, and then throughout. That's where all the law comes. When in the New Testament, when they're talking about the law, it's the Mosaic covenant and everything. So before they even leave Egypt, though, God reminds them of the covenant he had with Abraham, and he said, say to the sons of Israel, I am the Lord. I will bring you out from under the burdens of Egypt. I will deliver you from their bondage. I will also redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. Then I will take you for my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God who brought you out from under the burdens of Egypt. Okay, so he reestablishes that covenant that he had with Abraham, saying that Israelites are his people. So it's repeated in after that, when they're going through all that, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Abraham's descendants, are from that Abraham thing. But it becomes the Mosaic covenant because then he gives them the whole law. He gives them the 10 Commandments and he gives them all that. That's the Mosaic covenant. Then after they get into the Promised Land and they settle in there, and then again they fall away, of course, and then he chooses David to be his king, and that from David's descendants he is going to, that's also where Jesus is going to end up coming from. So to David he sent Samuel, who was the prophet at the time when David was around, and so he said to Samuel, he said, I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons. And that's in 1 Samuel 16:1. So the Davidic covenant is going to be that kings from David's household will be established on the throne of Judah forever. So that's the Davidic covenant. And then the final covenant is going to be the new covenant. And so in the new covenant is going to be with Jesus. But in the Old Testament, they prophesied that the new covenant was coming. So in Jeremiah, it said, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And then he's talking about Jesus. So that's the covenants that are found throughout the Old Testament there. As far as idolatry, now these kind of go hand in hand, right? Because you'll have a promise, and then the human side of that doesn't hold up to their end of the promise, and then God makes another promise, and then the human side again turns back. So it a lot of times it comes back to this idolatry. Now, not always idolatry; it's sin in general, but idolatry is the practice of recognizing or worshiping anything other than Yahweh as God. So really, when we think idolatry, we think the idols, right, that they had back in Egypt or whatever, but it really can be anything. So like in today's day and age, we don't maybe have idols, but we still put other things in place of God. So back in the Old Testament, the very first fall, whenever they chose to eat the fruit that they were told not to eat, and they chose to listen to the servant instead of listening to God, that was putting their desires above God's, which is idolatry. So it starts out in Genesis 3, and then another good example in Genesis is the Tower of Babel. They made like their creation was going to be mightier than God, and so again, he ended up making their speech and everything. But then when we come along to the Mosaic covenant and all of those things, God really, when he lays down the 10 Commandments, he really pushes on the idolatry thing. So it says it's going to be in Leviticus 20, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And the very first thing is you shall have no other gods before me. The second thing is you shall not make yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing love and kindness to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. So the first four are all about making God number one. And then idolatry is going to be anything that doesn't make God number one, which is what continually happens throughout the Old Testament. As the Israelites, even right after they leave Egypt, they make cows at Mount Sinai while Moses is up on the mountain talking to God. They make cows to worship because they don't have faith to believe that God is God and God alone. So that it's easy for us to look at that and be like, how could they do that? But we do the same thing now. We have the Bible that tells us who God is, and still we choose other things. So that's the two main themes that are going through the Bible. And so important in their own right. So covenants define they're the building blocks to understanding how the whole system works, like the promises between God and us, and that requires a sacrifice. And that's how you get, when you get to the New Testament and you see Jesus died on the cross for us, that's because of those covenants that built on the way up, right? And so, and then idolatry, the important thing for them is it's a reminder, all these things that they turn to idols and stuff, and we think that, but we do the same things now by just following our own plans instead of God's plans. So those are the two, how they are important on their own. And so it's going to be into this video. The next video, we're going to talk about how that all fits into the whole story.